Well, joining me now to discuss the top story coming in from the U.S. is Erol Morkoc, a senior Republican spokesman. He joins me from California. The big, beautiful bill is top on the table tonight, and of course, the Supreme Court's ruling over the week, which is a big win for Trump. Now, this big, beautiful bill has Republicans divided. Erol, as a senior Republican spokesman, what can you tell us about the division within the party?
I think it's a healthy division, and it certainly isn't without merit. Obviously, the Republican Party has always put itself on the side of financial austerity, and quite simply, since about the middle of this century, that has not been the case. And when it comes to this bill, there is a lot of pushback by not just vocal people, but also smaller voices that aren't heard, saying, "Hey, this isn't exactly what we expected. We thought we were going to be cutting." And in the way the U.S. government is functioning, in the way that the Treasury Secretary is looking at things, I think we've crossed the Rubicon in terms of how far we can dial things back. Everything is on such a breakneck pace. When you look at the evolution of AI, when you look at the fifth industrial revolution coming, robotics, advances in medicine, and this isn't the time to put the brakes on that. So we look at the last 4 years and the very high inflation rates we've had, how that's really affected a lot of working people. And then we zoom out and we say, okay, how can we actually help the people? Well, the only thing we can do is grow the economy faster than the debt is growing. And right now, that is the play that they're making. And that is certainly not a traditional Republican play. It's become much financially, the country has become much more of a uniparty, because as soon as you start to try to cut any benefits for anybody, including Republican senators such as Murkowski in Alaska, they say, no, we can't do that. And so this big, beautiful bill, I think it's something that gets the ball rolling, and there's going to be a lot of discussions in the next. They have sort of a vote-a-rama that happens in the Senate, where they go through and try to make amendments. But it's certainly not without criticism that it's not exactly what some of the Make America Great Again loyalists were hoping. However, when you look at job security, when you look at the growth of the country, what's needed in infrastructure, what's needed in everything. This is the U.S. government. The U.S. government's ultimate goal is to help the people, and deficit-driven growth is the only thing that the modern fiat currency system is allowing them to do. Now, you see backdoor inroads into other financial systems and other ideas, but at least right now we're sort of caught in the maelstrom of the last 20, 25 years. It's not without criticism, but I believe that the bill will be as focused as possible on delivering the promises that President Trump has made to the American people.
Now, Elon Musk, let me bring him in. He fell out with the president, obviously, for these reasons. He's also criticized the bill as it negates what Trump primarily promised during the campaign in 2024, and also talking about, losing energy, megawatts in the U.S. For Elon Musk, do you think this is more personal because he's considering his business, and of course, it cuts across other business owners in the U.S. as well?
It's definitely personal for Elon Musk. Without his support, I do not believe, and many people do not believe, that Donald Trump would be president. One of the things that is the most glaring here is the retraction of the EV mandate, the government money facilitating the buying of electronic vehicles. But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is more concerned with job growth in Michigan than he is with share value in Silicon Valley. And Elon Musk being an outlier in his industry and coming over to our side doesn't mean that he owns the Republican Party. There was a famous phrase back when Roosevelt was elected by John Rockefeller saying, "We bought the guy, but he doesn't stay bought." The same thing with Donald Trump. Elon thought maybe he had bought more influence than he had. But in actuality, if these green solutions are so viable and so functional, then you're going to have private investment come to it. And I understand Elon's point, but ultimately we're here to drive growth for the people we promised that growth to. And that growth was to traditional sectors, to steel, to energy sectors outside of electronic energy, solar energy, and towards manufacturing of traditional gasoline-powered vehicles, which was what Donald Trump promised. So it is personal to Elon. He certainly does have a point in the sense that what was promised was a lot of cutting of waste, and what is being shown is cutting of his side of things and an increasement of benefits for traditional sectors. That doesn't mean that Elon's wrong and that this bill is completely fantastic, but Elon obviously has his own game that he's playing, and he's obviously personally affected by this. And Donald Trump is not the MAGA president, he's not the Elon president, he's the American president, and he has to do what's best for the American workers.
Now, let me also bring you in on, what critics are saying. At a time of massive, wealth inequality, according to them, this beautiful bill makes the obscenely richer oligarchs even richer while attacking the most basic needs of working families and the most vulnerable people in the U.S. Now, according to them also, there are massive tax breaks for the richest people and the largest corporations, and pay for them by making gigantic cuts to Medicaid, nutrition, and education and other programs. It sounds more like a dog-eat-dog world, according to, critics.
Well, certainly critics, especially from the left, have lobbed those accusations quite frequently. But if we zoom out and we look back, the people who made the most money in the last 4 years were the oligarchs, if you want to use that terminology. It's very tough to have people who have a lot of money lose money. That's a very difficult thing for them to do. They don't usually do that. When you look at the U.S. tax system, you have 40% of the taxes being paid by 1%. And then the rest of the tax burden is shared from basically the 2% down to the 20%. Now, the idea that tax cuts in this sector are somehow negative is ameliorated by the facts in 2017, where Trump's tax cuts came online, and you had record unemployment rates in all across all sectors. You had, especially in minority communities, you had an increased living standard. You had, and also, especially with capital gains taxes and everything like that, every time those have been lowered, you've actually had a total revenue increase collected. So you're talking about investing in the American people. Who's going to be able to do that? Well, those are the people who have these big multinational corporations. And a lot of this is going to be onshoring money that's been offshored in Ireland, for example, by a lot of tech companies. So bringing this money back, reinvesting in all of the trillions and trillions of dollars that are being invested in U.S. manufacturing, that's the positive side of it. And lowering taxes on everybody collectively, of course, the highest payer is going to see the highest marginal difference. But when the actual figures come out, I think everybody's going to benefit, as they did in 2017. And the economy needs to start growing at a healthy clip that's not being built by government subsidies. And to do that, we need to give private capital the ability to act and be effective and be flexible. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. He's continuing that pro-business policy of his last term. And I think that everybody's going to be very happy to see where it goes going forward.
But Erol, I would like to bring your attention to, this, because, I mean, the numbers are out there. How can you explain the bill paying a $664, billion tax break for the top 1%, just as you mentioned, in the U.S., when, you already, because these people are the ones that, fund the, tax, like you said, 47%. But then the bottom represents 93%. It seems to favor the ones who can fund, government desires and projects.
It does, and certainly government public-private partnership has always favored larger institutions who are able to provide governmental value. Now, inside of those companies, you have to keep in mind they're hiring regular people, and regular people's true wage growth is up. And when you have more opportunity, lower restrictions, lower tax burden for a business owner, he's going to take more risk, which is going to open up more economic behavior down below. Now, I'm not here to say trickle-down economics is the end-all be-all, but in the end, when you're trying to jumpstart AI and robotics, the next thing you need underneath that is going to be nuclear power and all sorts of things that require large enterprise businesses to do and large conglomerated securitized risk. And I don't think there's any possible way to jumpstart that growth by giving a marginal tax break to people who almost don't pay any taxes and trying to increase the taxes on the top people. The top people will just simply leave and take their businesses elsewhere. And what we're trying to do is onshore businesses to America to drive that growth. I do hear the criticisms, but those criticisms are always statistically valuable because the top people, of course, are going to be paying the highest number that breaks down because they're paying so much in actuality. Now, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be, some deep looks at how corporate taxes go and these sorts of things. But ultimately, this has been a good thing for the country before, and we do believe it'll be a good thing going forward, although optically it does have that negative connotation.
Now, the Congressional, Budget Office, which is the CBO, has estimated that this bill will eliminate health care for 13.6 million Americans. Just this week also, Yale University and University of Pennsylvania estimate that if this bill is enacted, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily due to the massive cuts in Medicaid and Affordable Care Act. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, these are sort of the topics that are very contentious because the idea that one side is somehow anti-healthcare and the other side is pro-healthcare is simply false. I think a lot of these things have to do with the waste and abuse that has happened in the American medical sector, especially. One of the biggest thing has been the incredible rising cost of administrative costs. It's to the factor of 5 where it was 20 years ago. So cutting some red tape and removing some things are very different than creating a situation where we're going to lose 50,000 lives. I would really like to see them break out their details in something other than headlines when they say that. There's no elderly people or anybody with pre-existing conditions or anything that's going to be impacted by this. They're trying to cut unnecessary costs and unnecessary funding. And if there's failure there, and if that's not going how they presented it to the American people, their representatives are going to be bringing that to President Trump's attention. So this isn't just a blank check and we go forward. This is something that's going to be flexible and fluid, but there certainly is no intent from anybody on our side to remove anybody's legitimate benefits. What we do want to make sure is anybody who's in this country illegally, who's receiving Medicaid, which is currently happening, is kicked off of Medicaid. If you're not a US citizen and you're not a taxpayer, you do not have a right to that. And there's a lot of this type of fraud, and a lot of these people are going to be removed from the rolls, as well as a lot of potentially other fraudulent or inappropriate applicants. But as far as honest tax-paying American citizens, I do not see that being the case.
Fingers crossed. Let's see what the Senate comes up with. Now, I'll take you back to what Trump said about, TikTok. That has been in the news for quite some time, but he says a group of buyers have been found for TikTok, which faces a looming ban in the United States due to China ties. Now, is that going to raise some smoke from China, being that, the trade... people have been calling that some sort of trade war that's been going on between the United States and China. That happening, do we have implications for the United States?
I think, well, it's a very bizarre saga, and everybody who's been watching this from a business or political standpoint has been sort of befuddled by the TikTok situation. Obviously, Donald Trump has made it a pet project of his. He came in, he was an outsider candidate using social media again, and then he started to use TikTok, and all of a sudden he went from anti-TikTok to, hey, TikTok's pretty cool, we should keep TikTok around. Well, what does that happen? We've gotten to a trade situation where, according to the Trump team, they have signed at least preliminary documents. And while TikTok is a large company and has a lot of influence, when you're at the state level of China and the United States, it's really just a talisman. And obviously, it's something that Trump cares about, and it's something that he thinks the Chinese have an interest in maintaining as a cultural, export that they have. So I think, if anything, this will be sort of a cherry on the top at the end of this thing. I think it's going to go the way that Donald Trump wants it, but also for the Chinese, it's going to save that company for ByteDance and the original investors. They're all going to be made whole by this new investment consortium, probably out of Silicon Valley. And I think that TikTok ultimately has been a talisman bellwether, but it's not really the end all be all in this trade war. And I think as we're getting to the end of it, that's why Trump is announcing in 2 weeks, he's going to announce that, because likely that's when the final deal with China comes out and he puts TikTok as the final pin in the map there.
Okay, then let's talk about, the big win for Trump at the Supreme Court earlier in the week. I'm sure Republicans are happy about that. Now, this new development with the court leaves room for lower courts to curb the impact on those who have standing, to sue. It's going to be a lot of, court cases and back and forth, and can be distracting, don't you think?
It can be distracting, and it's something that that lawfare and legalese has always sought to do. When anything's on a good track, they want to distract it. But ultimately, the states do not supersede federal authority here. And the idea that the states are going to start running checks and balances on something decided in the Supreme Court, that quickly becomes a crime. That becomes a form of secession against the union, and that's not something that's allowed. So, well, and also important to realize, we didn't take away anybody's ability to sue for damages. You just need to sue for damages and go through the entire trial and actually be a claimed victim. You can't just go cherry pick some district in Seattle or in New York where 35 of the 40 injunctions came from the same 5 places and try to change national law. So the age of the unelected random judge appointment anywhere influencing national policy, let alone foreign policy, I think has come to the end. You saw them try to influence Marco Rubio and bring back that plane that was deporting the illegal immigrants. And Marco Rubio just simply said, no, you're just a federal judge. This is international business. And with all of these new rulings and updates, they can do all they want, but ultimately they are beholden to the federal system. And in federalism, they are beneath this decision, and there's no room for them to do anything besides argue. And ultimately, a lot of those are going to be thrown out in court because they've already been ruled on by the Supreme Court above them. But I welcome them to try it. That's the beauty of the American system. Nobody's taken away anybody's right to sue if they're injured. You needed to go through the proper processes, and you can't stop federal action until you succeed in your lawsuit and appellate.
Now, are you trying to say, because, I mean, Democratic-run state governments, as you know, will be in no rush to accept whatever Trump has. So no matter what the Trump administration may desire, states traditionally handle, processing birth, certificates, and many do not record the citizenship of the parent. So are you saying that, the federal laws, like you said, supersede the states? And so states where you are in, like California or sanctuary states, would not, can decide to, go by the laws of those states or go by the federal laws. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that unfortunately for any state lawmaker who wants to make their mark on this, there's no more room for debate. The states do not have the right to continue operating the way they have. If they're not recording or finding out the citizenship of the parents, now they're going to be implored to do so. And if they start to refuse to lawful federal orders from the Supreme Court all the way through the executive branch and out, then you start to come into a situation where you're not a resistance, you're actually in rebellion. So the states are going to have to get in line, or they're going to have to deal with Attorney General Bondi, and she's not going to be very happy about that. And she's certainly willing to prosecute if states are trying to usurp the federal authority, which they are legally bound to be underneath. Now, that doesn't mean this is going to happen. I do think that the states ultimately do comply with almost all federal regulations. California is a very special place that has fought the federal government in many areas, whether it be from environmental regulation or minimum wage. But when it comes to something like this that's so centralized, there's not going to be a lot of room, and they're going to end up losing in court if they choose to go that route.
Now, I would also bring your attention to this before I let you go. Justice Amy Barrett, while writing for the majority, left the door open for states to make the case that a broader block on Trump's birthright citizenship action is necessary. That sets up a big legal battle to come, Erol.
It does. And the birthright citizenship is, it's something personal to me as a naturalized American citizen. My father is a naturalized American citizen. It's important to realize that this loophole that was used by a lot of people who are here to exploit it isn't the original law of the land. The birthright citizenship was for the descendants of slaves after the Civil War. And then after that, it was sort of a cool thing that America had, where, we would get some random new additional people into the country in this, we're the only major country, modern country that has this law. But all of a sudden, it started to become abused. In China, we have very, very wealthy Chinese women who come over here, have babies here. The baby gets an American passport. They go back to China. When they're 18, they all come over. On the lower end, you have people coming from Central America and Latin America. They come through to give birth on U.S. soil, and then they have what's called an anchor baby, where they try to say, hey, my baby's here. He's a citizen. I stay here. So the letter of the law has been manipulated and abused. And that's what's, I think, Attorney General Bondi wants to have adjudicated in the courts. Does the 14th Amendment really mean just anybody, or was it actually designed for the intended stated purposes, which was the offspring of slaves? And is it now being abused and we need to amend it again? That's the cool thing. It's an amendment, and it's something that is, in my opinion, has been exploited as an immigrant. And I don't think it's a very beneficial thing to other immigrants to see this kind of exploitation. It makes us look bad. It makes people think that perhaps things aren't on the up and up, and we want to make sure immigration in this country is clean cut. So that's what Pam Bondi's doing. And I do hope it goes to court, because I would like to see the outcome of a real fair debate.
All right, and thank you so much, Erol Morkoc, for joining us from California. We talked about the major stories. He's the senior Republican spokesman. You're watching